Settle down, cadets. Your babbling is giving me a headache worse than the time I drank fermented Jurillian swamp water. Commander Jackson Triax's voice boomed across the hexagonal classroom, instantly silencing the 30 elite cadets. His forearms crossed simultaneously in what the students recognized as his signature pose of impatience. The holographic classroom of the Galactic Defense Institute on Narvax Prime was state-of-the-art. The walls shifted between deep blue and purple hues, responding to the emotional temperature of the room. Currently, they pulsed with excitement and nervousness, first-day jitters that transcended species boundaries. Welcome to Advanced Tactical Analysis 515, or as we veterans call it, Know Your Enemy. Commander Triax's upper right hand waved dismissively. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Another boring course about battle formations and weapon configurations. Trust me, cadets, by the end of today, half of you will be begging to return to those simple lectures. Cadbelar Zan, a blue-skinned opterii with 6 eyes arranged in a circle around his head, raised a tentative limb. Commander, our curriculum states this course focuses on Class D species. With all due respect, why study primitives when the consortium faces threats from advanced civilizations? Commander Triax's face split into what passed for a grin among the Narvaxian species, a terrifying display of needle-like teeth that made several cadets flinch. An excellent question that demonstrates exactly why you need this course. Assumptions, cadets. They'll get you killed faster than a Voltarian acid slug. He slammed his lower left hand onto the central console. The room darkened instantly, and a 3-dimensional projection of a blue-green planet materialized in the center of the classroom. This, cadets, is a planet called Earth, home to a species known as humans. Classified as Stage 4 developmental, pre-FTL, resources limited to their solar system. The projection zoomed in to show bipedal creatures moving about primitive structures. By our standards, they are technologically backwards, politically fragmented, and physically unimpressive. And yet, the commander paused for dramatic effect, his secondary breathing vents flaring. And yet, they have survived catastrophes that would have wiped out many spacefaring civilizations. They have endured disasters, wars, plagues, and environmental collapse. They have come to the brink of self-annihilation multiple times, and somehow pulled back. Commander Triax circled the projection, his 4 eyes narrowing. Today we begin with the most fascinating aspect of human civilization, their approach to warfare. And I warn you now, what you're about to see has caused seasoned Narvaxian generals to request immediate retirement. A tall, insectoid cadet in the back row chittered in what her species considered laughter. They fight with metal and chemical propellants. What could possibly be so frightening about that? Cadet Mizra, I'll remind you that bravado is the first casualty of actual combat. Commander Triax's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. By the end of this session, you will understand why the Galactic Consortium has a standing order: do not provoke Earth, do not interfere with Earth, and most importantly, do not underestimate humans. He gestured with all 4 hands, and the room's lighting shifted to a blood-red glow. Galactic history is littered with the remains of civilizations who thought technological superiority guaranteed victory. Today you will learn why that assumption is not just wrong, it's deadly. The projection of Earth grew until it filled the entire chamber, surrounding the cadets with images of mountains, oceans, and cities. Despite themselves, several cadets gasped at the primitive beauty of the world. Now, Commander Triax said, his voice suddenly serious, let's begin with what humans call the art of war. Cadet Lorca Ven leaned back in her hover seat, the bioluminescent markings on her pale green skin pulsing with barely contained disdain. As the top-ranked tactical student in the Academy and daughter of Admiral Ven of the Consortium's 3rd Fleet, she had little patience for what she considered wasteful curriculum. Commander, with all respect, she called out, her voice carrying the melodious yet haughty tones typical of the Centauri species. My analysis suggests studying human warfare is equivalent to studying how cave dwellers throw rocks. Surely our time would be better spent on draconian shield harmonics or Vespid swarm tactics. Several cadets nodded in agreement, particularly those from technologically advanced worlds. Commander Triax fixed all four of his eyes on Ven, his upper set narrowing while the lower pair widened, a Narvaxian expression of dangerous patience. Ven, your father may command a fleet, but in this classroom your rank means nothing. The commander's voice remained level. Your superiority complex, however, makes you the perfect demonstration subject. He gestured toward her with his upper right hand. Please, approach the projection console. As Ven reluctantly complied, another cadet observed the exchange with intense interest. Harville Dunn, a stocky, gray-skinned humanoid from Teller Prime, leaned forward. Unlike most cadets who had joined the Academy for glory or family tradition, Dunn had enlisted out of genuine intellectual curiosity. His 6 fingers rapidly took notes on his neural tablet as he watched. Cadet Ven, please select any period from human history where their civilization faced extinction, Commander Triax instructed. The simulator will project the probable outcome based on consortium predictive models. Ven smirked and tapped at the controls. Their second global conflict, circa 1940s by their calendar. Primitive ballistic weapons, rudimentary aircraft, no energy shields, minimal medical technology. The holographic display shifted, showing Earth consumed by spreading waves of destruction. Cities fell, radiation spread, and within 2 years the simulation showed human civilization collapsing entirely. Predicted outcome, complete societal collapse, possible extinction, the AI announced. And yet Commander Triax said softly, tapping another control, here is what actually happened. The real historical footage played alongside the simulation. The ruined cities rebuilding. Nations once at war forming alliances. Scientific advancement accelerating rather than halting. Population recovering and then booming. Impossible, muttered Ven. The statistical models are wrong when applied to humans, finished Commander Triax. Try another scenario. For the next 20 minutes, Ven selected catastrophe after catastrophe, pandemics, climate disasters, resource depletion, civil wars. Each time, the predictive model showed extinction or collapse. Each time, the historical record showed recovery, adaptation, and advancement. From his seat, Cadet Dunn raised a hand. Commander, is it possible our predictive models are fundamentally flawed when analyzing humans? Commander Triax's mouth formed what passed for a smile among his species. Excellent question, Cadet Dunn. Conventional tactical analysis requires understanding your enemy's breaking point. The disturbing truth about humans is that they don't seem to have one, at least not one we can reliably identify. He gestured, and a timeline of Earth appeared, stretching across the classroom. Red markers indicated extinction-level events. What you're seeing, said the commander, is a species that should have died out at least 7 times according to our models. A species that turns defeat into weird, unexpected forms of victory. The classroom atmosphere had shifted. Where there had been dismissive smirks and bored postures, now Triax saw furrowed brows and uncomfortable shifting. Several cadets were staring at the timeline with professional concern. She could then return to her seat, her bioluminescent markings now pulsing in the purple pattern that indicated cognitive dissonance among Centauri. But Commander, she said, her voice having lost its edge, if they're so resilient, why aren't they interstellar yet? Their technology is centuries behind the consortium standard. Another excellent question, replied Triax. And to answer it, we need to examine how humans fight. Not just against nature or themselves, but against others. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the now attentive classroom. Fair warning, cadets. This is where it gets disturbing. The classroom darkened completely, plunging the cadets into momentary blackness before light erupted from the center. The holographic display now showed armored humans marching in tight formations across dusty plains. The Roman legions, announced Commander Triax, approximately 2,000 Earth years ago. Notice the formation discipline, the uniformity of movement, the synchronized shield wall. The footage shifted to show a battle. Metal struck metal. Blood sprayed across sand. Men screamed and died, but the formations held, advancing with mechanical precision despite the casualties. "By the 7 moons," whispered a serpentine cadet near the front, her scales rippling with shock. Another scene materialized. Mounted warriors swept across vast grasslands, firing arrows with impossible accuracy while at full gallop. "Mongol hordes," Triax explained. "A nomadic culture that created the largest contiguous land empire in human history using nothing but animal mounts, curved metal, and sinew." Cadet Mizra, the insectoid who had laughed earlier, was no longer chittering. Her compound eyes reflected the scenes of horsemen brutally efficient in their conquest. The display shifted again. Armored humans on larger mounts crashed into each other, metal lances splintering, bladed weapons hacking through primitive armor. "Medieval knights," said Triax. "Note how humans encased themselves in metal to simulate an exoskeleton they don't naturally possess." Lorcaven raised her hand, her earlier arrogance now tempered but not eliminated. "Commander, all I'm seeing is brutal inefficiency. They're literally stabbing each other with sharpened metal. This is barbaric, not impressive." "Is it?" Triax manipulated the controls, freezing the scene on a knight with a spear. "Consider the resource limitations, Cadet Ven. No energy weapons, no anti-gravity, no neural interfaces. Yet they adapted their environment and themselves to compensate." Harville Dunn leaned forward, his gray features intense with concentration. "They're weaponizing their environment. Look how they use terrain, weather conditions, even the movement of their mounts to gain advantage." "Precisely, Cadet Dunn." Commander Triax expanded the display to show a massive battle with thousands of humans engaged in combat. "What you're witnessing is human adaptation in its purest form. When faced with a stronger opponent, they don't surrender, they innovate." The footage now showed enormous stone projectiles launched from primitive machines, crashing into fortifications. "Their entire history is a cycle of problem-solving through escalating destructive capacity," continued Triax. "They lack natural weapons, so they create artificial ones. They lack natural armor, so they forge it from their environment. They lack our sensory capabilities, so they build machines to extend their perception." Another scene, humans using fire against other humans. Screams echoed through the classroom's audio system. 3 cadets in the back row exchanged alarmed glances. But Commander ventured a crystalline being whose transparent body refracted the holographic light. "This demonstrates cruelty, not tactical superiority." And does it not demonstrate both, Cadet Nexus? Commander Triax's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Humans possess a remarkable duality. The same species capable of this he showed footage of prisoners being executed also created strict codes of combat honor. The display shifted to show knights kneeling before battle, enemies treating the wounded, ceremonial exchanges of captured leaders. They can be savage beyond comprehension in one moment, and in the next, risk their lives to save an honored enemy. Triax's voice grew quieter. "It makes them unpredictable." A tall, willowy cadet near the door stood abruptly. "Commander, I request permission to be excused." The cadet's breathing sounded labored, their skin flushing a deep orange. "Permission granted, Cadet Yalo." Triax nodded sympathetically as the cadet hurried out. "And that, class, is a perfectly reasonable reaction. What we're witnessing isn't just warfare. It's the evolutionary psychology of a predator species that turned its hunter instincts upon itself, then honed them to perfection over millennia." 2 more cadets requested to leave. As they exited, Commander Triax's voice followed them. "We're just getting started, cadets. Those with sensitive digestive systems might want to skip lunch." "Let's fast forward a bit," Commander Triax announced, his lower arms manipulating the time controls. Humans developed rapidly over the next few centuries. Their industrial capacity expanded exponentially, and with it, their capacity for warfare. The holographic display shimmered and reformed, showing massive metal vehicles crawling across muddy terrain, spitting fire and metal. Above them, primitive aircraft dueled in the skies while below, Humans huddled in dirt trenches as explosions erupted around them. First World War, Triax explained. Humans had figured out how to mechanize death. Notice the scaling, millions of casualties, continent-spanning battlefields. Ted Dunn, who had been taking notes feverishly, paused. They're just standing there, being slaughtered by the thousands for minimal territorial gain. That's not tactical innovation, that's insanity. Ah, but watch what happens next. Triax advanced the timeline. The footage now showed soldiers wearing masks, curled in agony as yellow clouds rolled across the battlefield. In chemical warfare. When brute force failed, they weaponized their own planet's elements. Several cadets shifted uncomfortably. One Floraxian cadet's petals closed protectively around its sensory organs. And when that failed, Triax advanced again. Now the display showed massive formations of flying machines dropping explosive devices on population centers. Enormous vessels exchanged fire on vast oceans. Armored vehicles smashed through defensive lines. They escalated. Second World War. The entire planet engaged in conflict. The classroom fell silent as footage showed soldiers storming beaches under withering fire, climbing over their own dead to advance. This makes no tactical sense, Lorca Venn finally said, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. Why would the second wave advance when they witnessed the first wave's annihilation? Their probability of survival approached zero. That, Commander Triax said quietly, is precisely what makes humans dangerous. They continue fighting long past the point where other species would calculate defeat and surrender. The display shifted again, now showing small groups of humans hiding in dense vegetation, setting traps for larger, better-equipped forces. Guerrilla warfare, Triax continued. When facing technologically superior opponents, humans adapt. They abandon conventional tactics and use asymmetric approaches. Parvul Dunn leaned so far forward he nearly fell from his seat. They're using the environment itself as a weapon system. His voice contained no disgust, only fascination. Look how they're channeling enemy forces into ambush zones. That's brilliant. Brilliant and terrifying, added Triax. The same principle applied across centuries and environments. Desert warfare, urban combat, Arctic conditions, humans adapt to them all. The footage shifted to a night vision scene showing small teams of humans moving with precision through a settlement. They communicated with hand gestures, efficiently neutralizing targets with minimal movement. Special Forces operations, explained Triax, the elite human warriors who train to function in any environment against any opposition. Note their problem-solving methodology. If they lack the technology to solve a tactical problem, they compensate with training and psychological adaptation. A slender cadet with translucent skin stood up shakily. Commander, I request permission to withdraw from this course. 4 others quickly stood up beside her. Permission granted, Triax said, his tone soft with understanding. 5 more down. That's actually fewer than I expected at this point. As they left, Parvul Dunn remained entranced by the footage. Commander, when these Special Forces operatives are captured, how do they respond? Triax gave the Tellarian cadet an evaluative look. An excellent question that speaks to the core of human psychology under pressure. The display changed to show captured humans. Despite injuries, despite clear torture, many revealed nothing but identification codes. Some appeared to be taunting their captors. Name, rank, and serial number, Triax explained. Many reveal nothing else regardless of the inducements. Some human military units are actually prepared with false information specifically designed to mislead if their personnel break under questioning. They anticipate their own psychological breaking points and plan countermeasures. Dunn's eyes widened. That's metacognitive warfare. Indeed. Commander Triax enlarged a particular image showing a wounded human soldier still attempting to fight despite catastrophic injuries. This brings us to what might be their most disturbing quality. Humans possess a capacity called spite. They will frequently continue fighting even when victory is mathematically impossible, simply to impose maximum cost on their enemy. Cadet Misra, the insectoid who had laughed earlier, chittered nervously. But that's resource inefficient. Why waste military assets when defeat is certain? Because Triax replied, his four eyes blinking in sequence, humans understand something intuitively that many species learned too late. Today's defeat can sow the seeds of tomorrow's victory if the cost imposed is high enough. He paused, letting that sink in. When a human commander sacrifices his force to bloody a superior enemy, he's not being irrational. He's calculating a different kind of math, the mathematics of deterrence. Lorca Venn was no longer lounging in her hover seat. She sat rigidly upright, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in complex anxiety patterns. How has the consortium classified humans, truthfully? That, said Triax with a grim expression, is what we're building toward, Cadet Venn. But we're not done yet. Now we turn to the most dangerous aspect of human warfare, the psychological dimension. Physical combat is only the surface layer of human warfare. Commander Triax said, dimming the main display and activating a secondary projection. What truly separates humans from most species is their mastery of psychological combat. The hologram showed human communication networks broadcasting emotionally charged messages, stylized posters depicting enemies as monstrous, leaders giving impassioned speeches to massive crowds. Propaganda, explained Triax. The weaponization of information to shape belief. Humans instinctively understand that battles are won or lost in the mind before the first shot is fired. Cadet Parvel Dunn nodded enthusiastically. They're fighting on multiple dimensions simultaneously. Physical, informational, emotional. Precisely. Triax shifted the display. But it gets stranger. The new footage showed human soldiers in the midst of battle. Despite explosions nearby and obvious danger, many were laughing. Some called out jokes to each other. Others engaged in what appeared to be competitive behavior, calling out numbers as they neutralized enemy combatants. Is this some form of combat neuroses? Asked a purple-hued cadet with multiple eye stalks. Stress-induced psychosis? That was our initial assessment, replied Triax. But no. This is deliberate psychological conditioning. Humans use humor as a stress management technique in combat situations. They bond through shared danger. The display shifted to show squads of humans engaging in peculiar rituals before combat, touching hands, reciting phrases in unison, sharing intoxicants, or displaying images of their offspring. Morale-building behaviors, Triax continued. Humans fight more effectively when emotionally connected to their units. They form brotherhoods that transcend their natural family structures. Another scene showed humans playing music, actual vibration-based sound patterns in combat zones. Some danced amid the wreckage of battles. This makes no logical sense, muttered Cadet Misra, her compound eyes reflecting the bizarre scene. No, it doesn't, agreed Triax, which is precisely why it works. Enemies who operate on logic find human behavior in combat zones deeply unsettling. The footage continued, showing humans using elaborate deception, fake equipment, false radio transmissions, and even individual soldiers mimicking the sounds of entire mechanized units. They call it psychological operations, Triax said. Creating uncertainty in an enemy's perception causes hesitation, which humans exploit ruthlessly. Lorca Venn stood abruptly, her bioluminescence flashing in agitation patterns. Commander, I must challenge the authenticity of this footage. These behaviors violate basic principles of tactical efficiency. No species would evolve such counterproductive combat methods. Triax turned all four eyes toward her. Are you suggesting this is fabricated, Cadet Venn? I'm suggesting it may be exaggerated for instructional purposes, she replied, though her voice lacked conviction. Would it comfort you to believe that? Triax asked softly. Something in his tone made several cadets shift uneasily in their seats. Commander, interrupted a bulky, amphibious cadet in the third row, I formally request transfer from this course. His moist skin had paled to an unhealthy gray. "This material exceeds my psychological tolerance parameters." "Granted," Triax said without looking away from Ven. "Anyone else?" 7 more cadets stood. Without comment, they filed toward the exit. The classroom, which had started with 30 elite cadets, now held barely half that number. As they left, Triax returned his attention to the remaining students. "You now represent the half of this class with the psychological fortitude to face uncomfortable truths. The division between you has begun." He wasn't wrong. The remaining cadets eyed each other with new awareness. Some, like Dunn, leaned forward with fascination. Others, like Ven, remained but with visible discomfort. The formerly collegiate atmosphere had fractured into something more complex: assessment, wariness, a primitive version of the very psychological dynamics they were studying. "You doubt the authenticity, Cadet Ven?" Triax gestured to the main display once more. "Perhaps this will address your skepticism." The hologram shifted to show a lone human soldier surrounded by enemies. Rather than surrendering, the human activated an explosive device, destroying himself and his attackers while laughing. Before the detonation, the audio clearly captured his final words: "See you in hell, boys. First round's on me." Self-sacrifice combined with humor, anticipation of mythological afterlife, and social bonding references, commented Triax clinically. The perfect encapsulation of human psychological warfare directed at themselves as much as their enemy. Even Ven had no response to that. Commander Triax stood motionless for several moments, his 4 eyes scanning the remaining cadets. The room had grown unnaturally quiet. Even the ambient hum of the holographic projectors seemed muted, as if the technology itself was holding its breath. "You've done well to remain," he finally said. "Now it's time for the truth." He tapped a security override sequence into his wrist console. "What I'm about to show you is classified level 9. Speaking of it outside this room is punishable by memory redaction." The main display shifted again, but this time the footage was different. The quality was crisper, the perspective more immediate. It showed space combat, but not the simulated kind they'd studied in basic tactical courses. 62 years ago, the Narvaxian Expeditionary Scout Fleet Gamma 7 encountered an unidentified vessel near the edge of the Orion Spur, Triax said quietly. Following standard protocol for pre-FTL civilizations, they attempted to disable and capture it for study. The footage showed a Narvaxian cruiser, sleek and powerful, firing warning shots across the bow of a much smaller, primitive-looking human vessel. The human ship appeared to be damaged, tumbling. "Standard procedure," murmured Lorca Ven. They were following containment protocols for primitive species contact. "Yes," agreed Triax. "By the book. Now watch what happened next." The seemingly crippled human vessel suddenly stabilized. It executed a maneuver that should have been impossible for its design parameters, coming about with startling speed. Before the Narvaxian cruiser could react, the human ship launched what appeared to be mining charges, crude but effective. The Narvaxian shields, calibrated for energy weapons, failed to stop the kinetic impact. They were playing dead? Cadet Mizra's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. That was a deception tactic. "Indeed," said Triax. The humans had noticed the Narvaxian cruiser well before contact and correctly assessed they were outmatched technologically. So they adapted, using psychological warfare instead. The footage continued, showing the aftermath. 3 Narvaxian vessels disabled by what amounted to industrial mining equipment repurposed as weapons. The final scenes showed human boarding parties in primitive pressure suits, using their projectile weapons in zero gravity with disturbing effectiveness. "This isn't historical footage," Parvel Dunn said slowly, his gray features locked in an expression of dawning comprehension. "This actually happened. To us." "Yes," Triax confirmed. "The humans captured 2 of our vessels. The third self-destructed rather than be taken. We lost 43 crew members. The humans lost 17, yet they still achieved their objective." A stunned silence fell over the classroom. But humans are pre-FTL," stammered Ven. They're confined to their solar system. Commander Triax's mouth formed his species' version of a sardonic smile. That was the official classification, yes. Reality proved more complicated. He pressed another control on his console. The classroom door slid open. A human walked in. Not a hologram, not a recording. An actual human dressed in a modified version of the consortium's diplomatic corps uniform. The being was tall by human standards, with dark skin and close-cropped hair streaked with silver. A network of scars traced one side of its face, combat injuries that had been allowed to heal naturally rather than being regenerated away. "Hey, cadets," said Commander Triax with formal precision, "allow me to introduce Military Liaison Jordan Blackwood of the United Earth Defense Force." The human smiled, a disconcertingly wide facial expression that exposed blunt teeth. "Be at ease, cadets. I promise I don't bite often." The translator rendered the words perfectly, but couldn't quite capture the strange, rumbling sound that followed, human laughter. Several cadets instinctively backed away. Parvel Dunn, however, stepped forward. "You're an actual human warrior," he said, fascination overriding protocol. "Those tactics we saw, you've employed them?" "Some," replied Blackwood. "Invented a few new ones, too. That's why I'm here." Commander Triax cleared his throat. "The truth, cadets, is that humans are not our study subjects. For the past 50 years, they've been our allies. More than that," added Blackwood, "we're your instructors. The consortium recognized something valuable in how we approach combat, something that might be needed soon." Ven found her voice. "Needed for what?" Triax and Blackwood exchanged glances. "The void hegemony is expanding again," Triax said quietly, "and conventional tactics have failed against them twice before. So now," Blackwood continued, "we're trying something unconventional. A joint special warfare unit combining consortium technology with human creativity." Parvel Dunn stepped forward without hesitation. "I volunteer, sir." Both Blackwood and Triax raised their eyebrows, a surprisingly similar gesture across species. "The program selection process is extremely rigorous," cautioned Triax. "Good," replied Dunn. "So am I." The human's scarred face broke into another smile. "I like this one, Commander." He gets it. 6 months later, the Great Hall of the Galactic Defense Institute gleamed under ceremonial lighting. The graduating class stood at attention, all 10 of them. Where once 30 elite cadets had begun their journey, only a third remained to complete it. Admiral Helios Krav, Supreme Commander of Consortium Forces, moved slowly down the line, affixing insignia to each graduate's uniform. When he reached Cadet, now Lieutenant Parvel Dunn, he paused. "Lieutenant Dunn," the Admiral announced, his voice carrying across the hall, "for exceptional aptitude in cross-species tactical integration and outstanding collaborative work with human military methodologies, I present the Order of Adaptive Excellence, First Class." The medal gleamed as it was affixed to Dunn's chest. Nearby, Military Liaison Blackwood nodded in approval. The human's scarred face set in what the assembled aliens had learned was a gesture of pride. Lorca Ven, standing at attention 2 positions down from Dunn, wore no special commendation but had completed the course despite her initial skepticism, a victory of its own kind. "You are the first," Admiral Krav told the graduates, "but not the last. Today you join an elite unit tasked with the consortium's most critical defense initiative." The ceremony concluded, but the story didn't end there. 3 weeks later, on a classified moon orbiting a gas giant in the Antares sector, human and alien forces moved in perfect, terrifying synchronization. Human unpredictability blended with consortium technology, alien precision enhanced by human adaptability. What emerged was something entirely new in the galaxy's long history of warfare. From an observation platform, Commander Triax watched with Lieutenant Dunn as the joint exercises unfolded. "Still think we're studying them?" Triax asked. Dunn shook his head, watching a human sergeant teaching a squad of Narvaxian troops how to laugh in the face of simulated death. "No, sir. I think they're the variable no one expected, not even the void hegemony. Below them, A human voice called out a joke that made no logical sense, yet somehow caused both human and alien troops to move faster, fight harder. Perhaps, Dunn said quietly as the joint force achieved another impossible objective, what the galaxy has always feared as its greatest threat might actually be its best defense. Commander Triax, watching humans and aliens celebrating their victory together, found he couldn't disagree.